Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'll be talking about the state of Arizona and why I think that this is the best swing state out of all of them for Joe Biden. Now, before I start talking about Arizona, I do want to just briefly lay out what I'm going to be referring to as the swing states for the rest of this video. They're the 7 toss-up states that I have left. They account for a very important 93 electoral votes, and whoever wins the majority of them is likely to win the presidency. So, again, you can make an argument that some states that I have left blank as the swing states here should be filled in for one party or the other. I understand those. You could definitely, talk to me about that in the comment section, which would be a good place for you to do so. Again, you can tell me if there's any swing states you'd add or remove. But these, I think, are a pretty fair. This is a pretty fair list of 7 states that are definitely in doubt and are definitely in that toss-up category, at least for now. So, Arizona, I think, out of these 7, is Joe Biden's best. I think it's the state he has the best chance to win, and he might win it by a lot more than he wins if he does win these other states. I think the margin in Arizona is going to be a lot greater if it does come down to that. So we're going to talk about it. I'll look at the primary data. I'll talk about the 2022 results in the state, and then we'll look back at 2020 and how Biden fared. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is Maricopa County. Maricopa County, it's right here. It's in the middle of the state. I'll pull it up on the 2020 map. And it's where Phoenix is. And Phoenix is a very big metro area. Obviously, the city itself is pretty big, but you also have suburbs outside of it like, Scottsdale, Mesa, Glendale, Paradise Valley. I feel like I'm missing one or two. I have been to this area many times. So I do know some of the cities there, but it's a really big metro area. And the county in 2020 cast almost 2.1 million votes, and the state of Arizona cast 3.4 million. So 21 out of 34, as a percentage, that's like close to 10/17, which is like 60 to 61. It's somewhere. It's close to 61% is what I will say, just based on my very rushed and bad mental math. But 61%, somewhere in that ballpark. Give me a 2% margin of error. But assuming Maricopa County cast roughly 61% of votes, assuming Maricopa County was responsible for roughly 61% of the votes that Arizona cast in 2024, that means it's really big. That means that 6 out of every 10 votes in Arizona came from this county, and that means that it had more sway on the electorate than the rest of the state combined. So what happens in Maricopa County matters more than anything that happens outside of Maricopa County. So in other words, if you had a 2-point swing in this one county alone, that would be more than enough to cancel out a 2-point swing the other way, in the rest of the state. And that's really important because that means that if Joe Biden loses support in the southern part of the state or the northern part of the state, he can make it up by doing just a little better in Maricopa County. And that is really interesting because it means that the way Maricopa votes will probably be the way Arizona votes, unless it's decided by under 1%. Because in 2020, Biden won Maricopa County by 2.2%, and he won statewide by 0.3%. So maybe Maricopa County is about 2% more Democratic than the state as a whole. But if Biden wins Maricopa County by 3 or 4 in 2024, it'll be very difficult for Trump to come back and win the state of Arizona because Maricopa County casts so many votes that he can't really make that up elsewhere. And so just to kind of talk about Maricopa County a little more here, we also have to remember that it's growing at a rate faster than Arizona. Arizona is a fast-growing state. A lot of people are moving there. Population is booming. But Maricopa County itself is growing at a faster rate than Arizona. So that means that in 2024, or it's 2024, but that means that, I guess, in November, the proportion or the number of votes that Maricopa County is responsible for proportionally will be more than it was in 2020. Maybe I can word this a little better. If you had, at risk of sounding like my 4th grade or 5th grade teacher, if you had a pie, that pie as a whole represents the state of Arizona and the total number of votes cast, the piece of the pie that is represented by Maricopa County will be bigger in 2024 than it will be in 2020. And I hope one of my 2 explanations was sufficient. If neither of them were, I'm sorry, but that's why I'm not really considering being a math teacher as one of my career paths. But on a more serious note, what that means is that what happens in Maricopa County in 2024 will matter even more than what happened in 2020. And even a 2% increase, like in 2020, it was 61% of the state's electorate. If in 2024 it's even 63% of the state's electorate, that would be a big swing in favor of Biden because he's likely to win Maricopa County again. And why do I say that? Well, Maricopa County has liked Democrats recently. Katie Hobbs won it by, I believe, 3% in the governor's race, and in the Senate race, Mark Kelly won it by 6. He won it by 100,000 votes, and it was pretty decisive because, again, he won statewide here by, looks like 126,000 votes, roughly. And most of that margin came out of Maricopa. Obviously, he was able to, run up the margins in Pima County. That's where Tucson is. It's a lot bluer than Maricopa. He won that by 104,000. And then, he did okay in Coconino and Apache counties. And he also did pretty well in Yuma. Only lost it by around 3,000 votes there. But Maricopa County accounted for the vast majority of his margin in 2022. And again, in 2020, it was important because Biden won Maricopa by 45,000 votes. He won statewide by 11,000, or less than that, 10,500. So if Maricopa County didn't exist, Biden would have lost Arizona, even though he only won it by 2%. Again, usually a 2% victory in one county doesn't do a lot for you statewide because you don't net a lot of votes. Maricopa County is so big that Biden only won it by 2% was enough to give him the state, times 3. This margin, 45,000, is, actually 4 times Biden's entire statewide margin. So, yeah, pretty important county, pretty big county, and it's getting bigger. And the good news for Democrats is that Maricopa County has voted Democratic in most of the past elections. Mark Kelly won it by 6. Katie Hobbs won it by 3. Democrats did lose it in the treasurer race narrowly. But, again, treasurer races are a lot more random and weird things happen in treasurer races. It's local. The best indicator of a county's federal partisanship is always the Senate race, and the Senate race was very favorable to Democrats in Maricopa County. So that's the problem for Trump here, essentially. And again, we can talk about, Tucson. We can talk about, some of these other areas up north. But Maricopa County is going to cast, if I had to guess, 62 to 63% of the total votes in Arizona in 2024. And it's trending left. Again, Maricopa voted for Donald Trump by, I think, 3% in 2016. And so it swung 5% to the left in 2020. And that's a pretty hard thing to do. 5% might not sound like a lot, but in a county this big, that's a lot of votes that Biden gained compared to Hillary Clinton. And even if it swings, even 3% to the left, which is definitely possible, it swung a lot to the left in the midterms. If it even swings, 2.5%, 3% to the left, that'll definitely be enough for Biden to win Arizona again. Because again, if he wins Maricopa by, let's say 4.7% or 5%, somewhere in that range, just under 5%, Trump has to do like 3 to 4% better in the rest of the state, maybe 5% better in the rest of the state, depending on, the math and the proportion of the vote that comes from Maricopa. So Trump will have to overcome that in other parts of the state, and I don't know if he'll be able to do that. It's definitely possible. That's why Arizona's not safe for Biden. But the thing with this is that it's just not likely. It's not likely to happen. And let's talk a little more about Trump now, because we've talked about Maricopa. Let's talk about Trump's chances. In the primary, he didn't do all that great. Now, he won it. 78% of the Republicans voted for him. But it is pretty concerning, I would say at least, for Donald Trump that his other opponents, they've all dropped out. Nikki Haley suspended her campaign weeks ago. And she still got 108,000 votes in Arizona. And we're not done. She'll probably get up to 110,000 by the time, maybe more than that by the time we're done counting. So that's really bad for Trump. And in Maricopa County, 72,000 people voted for Haley, and then another 6,000 voted for DeSantis, so probably a total of 79,000 people voted against him. And again, that's really, really bad for him because, if you think that these Haley voters are not likely to vote for him, the general, that's, 72,000 votes he's just losing outright. And a lot of these Haley voters probably voted for him in 2020. Now, to be fair, some of them probably voted for Biden or just still registered Republicans, and they're going to vote for Biden again. And, that has less of an effect. But even if there's, 10, 15,000 of these Haley voters out of the 72,000 that voted for Trump in 2020 and just have changed their opinion on him since then or don't like him anymore, which is possible, that's a problem for him. Now, Biden in Arizona did all right. He didn't, do all that well. He got 90% of the vote as an incumbent president, which is fine. This is a fine primary performance for him. He did well in Maricopa, only about 14,000 people voted against him. And I saw a stat on Twitter, which I think kind of reflects the, my belief about this primary and about Trump versus Biden in Arizona in general is that if you add up the Biden plus anti-Trump votes, so, you take these 360,000 Biden votes and then you take the Haley, DeSantis, Christie, etc. GOP candidate votes, he's 20,000 votes ahead of Trump plus, Williamson, Phillips, and these other people running. So more people voted against Trump in Arizona than voted against Biden in Arizona in this primary. And this was a GOP electorate. Republicans have all primary season had a better turnout in these primaries, and that remained. Democrats had 400,000 votes. Republicans had nearly 600,000. So Republicans outvoted Democrats by a lot in this primary because they have a more competitive primary and because they also are just more energized in general right now, as you would expect. In 2022, Democrats were outvoted in almost every primary, and they ended up doing fine in the general election. But yeah, so that's concerning for Trump. And again, it all comes back to Maricopa County. He did worse here than he did statewide. He got 78% statewide, got 76% in Maricopa. And he just, I would say, is going to have a hard time making it up because, again, this county is so big and it casts such a significant portion of the state's votes that he's going to have to make it up elsewhere. Again, left-trending county, a lot of educated suburban voters. And, Democrats won it by 6% in the most recent Senate race. And I think Trump is a similar candidate to Blake Masters in that a lot of people are going to view him as, right-wing and extreme. Mark Kelly's a more popular Democrat than Joe Biden for sure. But I would argue that there are not a lot of people who voted for Mark Kelly in the suburbs who are going to go and vote for Trump in November. I just have a hard time seeing that. So, that's going to do it. Those are just my thoughts. I, in short, think the math is pretty bad for Trump. And unless he does a lot better in the suburbs than we're expecting, I think he's going to have a really hard time winning Arizona. So is this state safe for Joe Biden? Definitely not. A lot can change, and obviously there is a path for Trump, even if he does do as poorly as I'm expecting him to do in the suburbs. But at the same time, this state to me stands out as I think Biden's best swing state of these 7. So again, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you agree with me. Feel free to suggest future videos, and I'll see you all in the next one.